welcome back to the Right Club podcast and our special Christmas collection of fan favourites. This week we're revisiting an episode that truly resonated with our community, our conversation with the brilliant Amanda Marples. Amanda's honesty, warmth and incredibly practical writing advice made this one of the most listened to episodes of the year. It's no surprise that listeners continue to message us about how much they took away from it. Enjoy this festive bonus replay of our top episode with Amanda Marples, perfect for your cosy winter listen. We'd also love to know what your favourite of our episodes has been so far. Let us know in the comments on our Substack. Hello and welcome to the Right Club podcast, where we take you behind the pages and into the fascinating world of writing. I'm Mary and this is Beth, and we're part of the team at Writing Magazine and Writers Online. Hi Beth, how are you?
Hiya, yeah, really good, thank you. Very excited about our guest this week. Amanda Marples is a mental health professional, mentor and published writer. She's also the creator of Reconcile Creative, a mentoring service for neurodiverse writers like herself.
Hello Amanda, where are we speaking to you from today?
Hello. So I am in Rotherham, up north in the UK, just right next to Sheffield.
Is that your writing space, or have you just found a quiet place?
Where I'm sat now, it's one of my writing places. I don't really have a specific writing place, but I probably do the majority of my work here. Yeah, I'd say so.
Lovely.
Amazing. Have you always wanted to be a writer?
I have always wanted to be a writer, and I think I have ADHD, and I think given my history, it took me a long time to put the wheels sufficiently in motion to organise myself enough to be able to write in a consistent way. But yeah, from being really, really young, I was very, very interested in words and writing. I did lots and lots of kept endless diaries as a child. I wrote a lot of letters to friends, and my diaries got increasingly morbid as I got into my teenage years. I wrote a lot of poetry, again, pretty morbid, pretty miserable poetry in my teens. Did a lot of that, but found it very difficult to put stories together, which we can probably get into a bit more if you want to. I always really wanted to, but I had an incredibly loud inner critic, which it took me many, many years to learn how to circumvent that, and even to understand what it even was. And I guess to become aware of it actually as well. It took me a long time to kind of figure out that there was this thing in my mind telling me not to write because I couldn't do it or nobody would like it or whatever. So yeah, it took a long time to kind of filter through into my awareness, and then even longer to learn how to kind of get around that. So yeah, it took me a long time. Yes, I've always wanted to write, imagined myself as a writer, did a lot of fantasizing about being a writer when I was very little. I had this kind of idyllic image of myself as a writer. But didn't really start writing properly, probably until I was in my early 30s, and I'm 46 now, so probably the last 15 years I've been writing.
And why do you think you had that idea to become a writer? Were you a big reader? Was it from that, or?
Yes, I think that is probably where it came from, actually. I read loads as a child, and I had a very rich fantasy life, I guess, as well. And that's something I've learned a lot more about as I've kind of looked into neurodiversity and learned more about myself and the way that my mind works. Something that often people that are on the spectrum, it's not something that you can be diagnosed with, but there's something called maladaptive daydreaming. I don't really like the term maladaptive because actually, for me, it was quite a protective thing. But I spent a huge amount of time in a daydream fantasy type world, very much fueled by the kind of material that I was reading. So I read lots of Enid Blyton and all the classics, lots of Enid Blyton and lots of Roald Dahl, but also I loved fantasy, and I loved Alan Garner, who was probably my favourite. And there were a couple of his books, one in particular called The Weird Stone of England, that I just read over and over and over and over again. So that very much kind of fed into my imaginary worlds that I used to build for myself. And they were worlds that I would rather be in than the real one. And I don't think much has changed, really. It's probably I probably don't spend quite as much time in imaginary worlds as I used to, but it's still there. So yes, that's a very convoluted way of answering that question. Yes, I read an awful lot. I very much used to escape into books as a child. It's the ultimate escapism, isn't it, really? They just come perfect, perfect enclosed worlds and nobody can disturb you.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's sort of a common theme through all the people that we're talking to, is that people that write read. And it's really interesting to kind of hear that side of people. But I mean, last year I know you ran a lot of webinars through Ryan magazine, and I was
Yes.
quite grateful to be on some of them actually, and being able to watch them, because the way you present is really fascinating, and the information you were giving out I thought was really, really interesting. So they were full of advice for like neurodiverse and neurotypical writers on topics such as procrastination, time management, handling rejection, etc. How did it go, and do you enjoy running those?
I love running those. I love running that series in particular. Um, yeah, I thought it went really well. They were really well attended. People seemed to really enjoy and relate to the material, and that's really what drives me to produce the kind of courses that I produce. It's all the material that I wish that I had known years ago. And I think had I known the things that I know now, partly through just bitter experience and just trying different things and learning more about myself, but also just, my professional experience and the things that I've picked up in my training and things like that. I do think often that if I'd had that information years ago, I might have been in a different place now. And that's a really, really common thing that I hear from other neurodivergent writers, actually feeling like they are behind all of their peers. In fact, there is research about that, about neurodivergent people being behind the curve financially, professionally, in relationships, all sorts of domains. So yeah, so I really love sharing what I know. One of the things that's kind of like a tagline, I suppose, in my, when I'm delivering these webinars, I always say at the beginning, you might remember actually, from those sessions, I always say at the beginning, I wish I'd known this years ago. I can't remember what it is that I say actually, something along those lines anyway. Yeah, because it felt very hopeless for me for a long time. It just felt like, I wanted to write, I felt like I was a writer, I felt like that's what I should be doing, but just did not have the skills or the tools to be able to get past my own brain to get onto the page, really. And some of the strategies and techniques are really, easy to apply, but you don't know what you don't know. So what I want to do is share it with other people because I don't want anybody else to waste any time.
Yeah,
That was this phrase that I was looking for. That's what I say at the beginning.
yeah,
I've wasted a lot of time. I don't want that for anyone else.
yeah, definitely. And I can see from those webinars and that entire series really that it's so lovely seeing the people in the chat putting all their lovely comments in. I think there was actually a couple of occasions where towards the end, when everyone was saying thank you, it was almost like bringing you to tears because everyone was being so lovely. So it just goes to show that they do really help people.
Yeah, definitely. It does nearly bring me to tears. I mean, I'm a very, very emotionally dysregulated kind of person anyway. It doesn't take much to make me cry. But I love the community. I love how open people are to listening to new ideas. And I'm always just blown away that people want to come and listen to me talk about this. It's never not an honor. I've run these this series a number of times now. In fact, I'm starting them again on Sunday in person in Sheffield through the Writers' Workshop, who I work with. I'm an associate with them in Sheffield. They are fantastic. Yeah, so I'm running them again, and I can't wait. I mean, I'm always really nervous, which is completely normal, but it's just brilliant, and I really enjoy watching people I like watching pennies drop in other people's minds when they realise that thing that they've been doing, is something that lots of people do, so it's not just them, which I think that in and of itself is really healing. And also that there are solutions. I think that's so important because it's very easy to lose hope, especially if you've been trying for years and not managing to get onto to finish that story or to even have any kind of a regular writing routine, it can be absolutely soul destroying when you feel like that's what you've been put here to do, but yet you can't do it. That's a really, really difficult place to be. And there's not an awful lot of, not a huge amount of advice for neurodivergent writers, for writers that are ADHD, dyslexic, Tourette syndrome, autistic. And the standard advice tends not to work too well for us. It needs to be adapted and tweaked for neurodivergent brains. I think that's been my experience. Because, before I decided to start pulling all this stuff together, I'd done a number of webinars and taken any number of classes, to try to figure out, how to manage my time, how to focus my writing. And I just could not apply these strategies. I just couldn't do it, which just served to make me feel worse, really. And, took me further away from doing what I wanted to do. So, yes, that's another very long-winded way of saying, yes, I really enjoy running those sessions.
Saying about feeling like you were meant to write. What is it about writing that lights you up? What excites you about it?
Yeah, this is a really difficult question to answer because it's not something that I can readily put my finger on. I just know that when I have got past myself, because I'm frequently in my own way, because I think that's an important thing to say as well, just go off at a slight tangent here. Some of these, the typical things that we struggle with as neurodivergent writers, whether it is focus and concentration or hyperfocus or difficulties with imagination or difficulties with managing time blindness, stuff like that. With the best will in the world and the best treatment in the world, these things are not going to go away. They're always going to be there. And that's part of what I've really had to accept about myself. Instead of shaking my fist at the sky, constantly yelling, why am I like this? I've had to just accept that I just am like this. This is just the way that I am. So this stuff continues to come up for me. So my process of trying to get onto the page involves me trying to get past myself, really, trying to get past my brain, trying to get past the barriers that I've got. And that can take quite a lot of energy up and can be really frustrating. And I'll be honest, there are days when I don't manage it. I don't write consistently every single day. Because I just can't, some days are really difficult, which I guess is true for anybody, but I think for people that are struggling with, certain conditions, it can be even harder. But once I've done that, once I have got past myself and I'm onto the page and I'm into a flow of writing, there is just no better feeling for me. And I think most writers would probably agree with that. Not to say that writing isn't also really hard work, and it is sometimes just, I think Stephen King, does he call it shoveling dirt or something like that? There's an awful lot of graft involved in writing, and it can feel like a slog, especially if you're, trying to get to the end of a first draft or something like that. It's incredibly hard work, but when you get into a flow state, it is just the best feeling. Because for me, as an ADHD woman as well, that flow state means my head finally shuts up, and I've got some peace and I'm just in a creative space. And it's just, and I imagine, if I'm sure if I had an MRI scan while I were in that flow state, I'm sure all my dopamine systems and reward systems are lighting up and going absolutely nuts. And obviously, for people that are ADHD and also autistic as well, when we're dopamine depleted, for us, when we're in that flow state, it's like medicine,
Yeah.
So yes, that's primarily, I would say, what I love most about writing is just being in that purely creative flow.
Lovely. We know you at Writing Magazine from winning quite a few of our competitions, the short story competitions, and you've won lots of competitions elsewhere as well. What is it about short stories that you particularly like?
I love a short story. It's interesting because when going back to when I were younger and seeing myself as a writer, I saw myself as a novelist. Before I'd even started doing any writing, I saw myself as, making these, sprawling novels, multiple books in a series. That's how I saw myself. And I think that's probably because if people say I'm a writer, that's kind of the stereotype. People say writer, they think novelist. So I think that was just what I expected. that would be, what that would look like. But actually, and I never even thought about writing short stories until I can't even remember when it happened, really. I think I might even have started with Flash. But in any case, what I like about it, it feels to me very much like, because I like analogies. Writing a novel, and I have written novels, I've not published any yet, but I've got novels that I've written. Writing a novel is like, it's like a marriage, it's like a long-term relationship. It takes hard work, it takes commitment. There are long periods of time, often spells when it feels like it's just not working. You want to abandon it, you want to walk away from it. And it's tough, and you feel like you're not going to survive it, and all of that stuff. Whereas a short story to me feels like a snog in the dark down an alleyway. It's done and dusted, it's exciting, it happens quickly, and then it's finished. And I really like that. As an ADHD writer, starting is really difficult, but finishing is really difficult as well. And the bigger the piece of work, the harder it is to finish. Whereas a short story, I can blast out a first draft sometimes in one session, sometimes in a couple of sessions. Piece of flash fiction, I can bash out, a piece of flash fiction in an hour, maybe. That really suits my brain. And I didn't realize that until I started to do it. And I realized how much just like the sense of completeness that you get from being able to write a short story. And the other thing for me as well about short stories is that I don't have to concern myself too much with plotting. I can very much, pants my way through a short story. I can just start with an idea and let the story tell itself, and then it finishes however it finishes, and I don't need to worry too much and start overthinking it, because that is the enemy, I would say, of probably all writers, full stop, never mind neurodivergent writers. But overthinking your plot can just really get in the way of actually getting words down. So yeah, I just like the brevity of it, really, the fact that I can just get it done and it's satisfying and it's done. I get lots of dopamine from that.
They're satisfying to read as well, aren't they, short stories? I absolutely love a short story.
Yes, they are. I love collections of short stories. There's so many collections of short stories that I really love. I love oh, I'm not gonna be able to think of a name now. Is it Laurie Moore? I think it's Laurie Moore. Her short stories are brilliant. Yeah, there's lots of people that I could name. Stephen King's short stories also are absolutely brilliant. In fact, I enjoy his short stories more than I enjoy his novels.
I'm not sure I've read any of his.
Oh,
Okay.
they're brilliant. He's
Yeah.
very, very good at short stories.
Have to
Really
add them
good.
to the list.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's done quite a lot of collections as well. So there's lots to go on.
Brilliant.
Oh, amazing. And have you had any sort of like being a writer, any sort of insights that led you to create your mentoring service and the webinar series? Anything specific that's kind of happened to you as a neurodiverse writer?
No, I think it was more a slow dawning and realization that this kind of coming together of realizing and getting diagnosed with ADHD and starting to come to terms with that, and then learning more about that. I also, I work with a lot of in the day job, because I still work a day job. I work for a university as an academic mentor. So I work with neurodivergent students all day, every day. That's my bread and butter. I've been doing that for a long time, and I was a social worker in mental health services for many, many years in the NHS before that. So all that kind of knowledge that I've acquired over the years kind of came together with me starting to write around 15 years ago, and then getting my diagnosis, which would have been 3 years ago, I think now. And it all just kind of came together. It just is dawning that this is stuff that I could, once I started learning what works for me and learning what works for the students that I work with as well, I just realized that I could bring all of this together and offer this as a service to other people, to reach as many people as possible, because I feel quite, passionately about the fact that, we're on a very uneven playing field. Quite often, neurodiversity, there are statistics about this. Don't ask me to quote them because I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there are, there is a triad, I guess, of like a big Venn diagram, if you like, of neurodiversity, poverty, trauma, mental illness, ill health. All of those things come together and converge to hold people back. So I very much feel like the neurodivergent voice is often missing from the arts because we don't have the correct support, we don't have the correct advice about how to get stuff done, and we're not privileged in the same way that our neurotypical counterparts might be, and that might irritate some people. But I think it's true, the amount of people that I speak to, and I'm writing about this at the moment, like I touched on earlier, that are years behind because they've not been able to get going. And because they've not been able to get going, like financially, they're not where they need to be. So they've not got the resources to be able to do things like go on expensive retreats or get a writing coach or whatever it is. So, that leg up that other people can often afford, neurodivergent people often cannot. And that's part of what why I really wanted to offer this service, because I know, because I've done my research, I know that my service is cheaper as well than a lot of other, like, for example, one of the things that I do is I offer small group mentoring for neurodivergent writers. So once a month I do one in person and I do one online. There's only 5 spaces available. So it's a space where people, so it's small enough for people to get really good quality advice from a professional in a setting that feels supportive and feels nurturing and has got that understanding and that sense of community. But it's a low cost because the individual ticket is not, it's not a bank breaker, but I get, paid what I need to get paid. And I think that really matters. I think it's really, really important. I've seen so much, I'm not throwing shade on anybody here, but like I said, I've looked into coaching for myself because I think everybody probably needs a coach or a mentor, and it's just out of people's price range. It's out of my price range. It always has been. So this is a better way, I think, for people that can't afford one-to-one mentoring or coaching long term. They can get it at a lower cost in a small group of people. And I think that works really well. I feel really, really strongly about that, about cost.
Yeah,
Did that answer the question? I can't even remember the question.
yeah, it did. Well, it's kind of a similar question actually. So, can you just tell us a little bit about Reconcile Creative, what you do, and how you came to set that up?
So I offer the small group mentoring.
Hmm.
I do one-to-one coaching as well. I've got I've grown, quite a number of clients over the last couple of years. Some of those people actually I see through Access to Work, which is a non-means tested benefit that people can apply for if they are in work, and that can be self-employed work. It doesn't necessarily have to be employed. It can be self-employed. So I see some people through Access to Work. So I offer that. I offer the small group mentoring. I run workshops, sometimes one-off workshops, sometimes in person. There's the series that I offer. I do the occasional masterclass for the Writers' Workshop in Sheffield. I offer consultancy as well. I'm just at the moment pulling together some training on trauma, which is another big area of interest for me, for an organisation. So that's something that I do as well. I can offer workplace training. And how that came about, as I said, this kind of dawning realization that, this is something that I can offer to people. I've got, my experience that I can share with other writers. It involved an awful lot of hand wringing. It involved an awful lot of trying to talk myself out of it and then trying to talk myself back into it, and a huge amount of anxiety and resistance, and being terrified of social media as well, which you will know about this, Bethany, because we've talked about this, haven't we, before separately. So yeah, a lot of tears, a lot of tears trying to set up my website, for example. That was the first thing that I did. I bought myself a domain and I built this website, which took me forever to do because I was petrified of clicking the wrong thing and causing some kind of nuclear reaction somewhere. Thought that the SAS were going to come crashing through my window because I'd done the wrong thing. Awful. Cried most days that I were working on that, but I eventually got over it and got that published. And then it's just built very, very incrementally. I would be lying if I said that I had a business plan. I do not. I have just done it and learned as I've gone along. I teach myself how to market. I've taught myself how to promote myself, not something that comes easy to me. And I've just done it a bit at a time. And it's involved a lot of false starts and a lot of having to stop because I feel overwhelmed and needing to wait for a few. So it's been a slow process, because I've learned that the worst thing that you can do if you're feeling burnt out is to push through. The thing to do is stop and take care of yourself and not panic that you're running out of time. I hear this all the time from neurodivergent writers and artists. And it's what I experience as well, this panic that if I don't do it now, I'm going to miss the boat and it's never going to happen. And I've had to learn really careful strategies to look after that when that arises and address it rather than beating myself up and trying to push through, because that just makes it worse. So yes, Reconcile Creative came together through an awful lot, literally, blood, sweat and tears, and it's taken a long time. But things are going pretty well at the moment. I've got a nice client group. People come to me without me having to do an awful lot, which is fantastic. Not quite cracked social media yet. Not quite got there, but I'm working on it. I'll get there eventually.
And how did your book, The Healing Workbook, with tips and guided exercise to help overcome trauma, come about?
Also on kind of health titles. One is self-care tips for students, and the other one is not out yet. I've just finished it, but it's a book of a gift book, quotes and affirmations for neurodivergent people. They're both pseudonyms, though, those two titles. But the Healing Workbook is, I got so much out of writing it, and it feels very personal to me, that book. So I'm very proud of that.
Lovely.
And it looks so pretty as well. They did such a great job with
It's a lovely cover.
the design. It's lovely. I really like it.
Yes. I wanted to ask you when you wrote. When do you find time to write?
Yeah, this is I always feel a bit guilty about this question, actually, because the answer is not it's not really what you want to hear. I don't really have a writing routine. After years of trying to make myself have a writing routine, I eventually decided that it was not worth it for me to try and force myself into a routine, because there's so many things that get in the way of me being able to have a routine. It's just best that I don't have one. And actually, if I don't have a writing routine, paradoxically, I tend to get more writing done. The
Interesting.
minute I tell myself I have to sit down at this time on this day and this is my space for writing, you can guarantee I will not be sat there doing that writing at that time. Partly because of time blindness, partly because of being highly distractible, and partly because of demand avoidance. If something feels like I should do, got to, must, have to, ought to, I will just resist it. And that's not a choice thing. That is an observed feature of many neurodivergent people. So I do not have a writing routine. Having said that, if I do any writing, it tends to be in the morning. Mornings are when I am sharpest. I've learnt that, as much as I hate to admit it. I am much better in the morning. By around this time, I am done for the day. I don't want to do anything. Probably I'd say from between the hours of 2 o'clock and 6 o'clock, I go into some kind of strange hibernation mode where literally I can't really do anything. So the best time for me is in the morning. That's when I write. And I write in all kinds of places. Sometimes I write downstairs, sometimes I write here at my desk, sometimes I sit on the floor, on a cushion, sometimes I'm in a coffee shop, sometimes I'm in the library. I do really love being in the library, I have to say. That's one of my favourite places to write. They're like churches for me, libraries.
Yeah.
I tend to use the university library where I work, which is a brilliant perk of working for universities. I get access to all those lovely books and just a really lovely space. So that's where I tend to write.
I heard you say in an interview that you were doing the morning pages from the Artist's Way. I've just been trying to do that myself this year. It's kind of a New Year's resolution.
Great, good for you.
Yeah, but it's quite hard. It's a lot more pages. It's a lot more words than I thought it was. It takes some time anyway.
It can be it takes me a good 20, 25 minutes, I think, to do my morning pages. It's second nature to me now, Mary. Keep at it. It will feel like that. I was talking to somebody about this in the group mentoring actually the other day, because they were talking about finding it hard to just kind of get it done and wondering if there was any value in it, if they did not, if they weren't enjoying it, or if it felt boring or difficult or whatever. And I know what they mean, and I would be the last person to ever tell anybody to do anything that they really don't want to do. I really don't think anybody should do that. But having said that, I kind of feel a bit like, for me, the morning pages feels like cleaning my teeth. Sometimes it's not a job that I really want to do. It's not something it feels boring sometimes. Sometimes the stuff that I'm writing in my morning pages is just not, it's just garbage. It's just me usually moaning about stuff. That's
Yeah.
very, very heavy on the moaning, my
Yes.
morning
It's
pages.
fine.
Yeah,
What am
quite
I annoyed about today? Oh, here you go.
yeah,
Here's the list.
exactly. What am I angry and resentful about today? What am I bitter and twisted about?
Yep.
So that all goes into, yeah. So it often it does feel like a grind, but it feels just like cleaning my teeth. I know that I've got to do it. I know that I've got to do it. I know that I'll feel better when I've done it, and it's just necessary. It's just a necessary thing that I have to do now. And I do feel like there's a benefit to it, partly because it's so difficult for me and for people that are like me to develop anything that's approaching like consistency or a routine. The morning pages is the one thing that I do, and I do it consistently, and I've probably been doing it now consistently for 5 years, I'd say. Occasionally I miss, occasionally I do miss, not very often, but I do. And when I do, I really miss it, which is interesting because even though, like, in the moment, it feels like, like my client said the other day, I'm not sure this is doing me any good, but I don't feel right if I've not done it. So it must be doing something. And I think, like Julia Cameron talks about in The Artist's Way, which is just such a great book, it just feels like it's a way for me of just reconnecting with myself first thing in the morning before I do anything else. Just kind of getting back into myself before my head is off into the day. I need that pause to just kind of let everything settle,
Yeah.
before my brain starts pulling its usual nonsense and trying to pull me off in a million different directions. The morning pages is that pause for me. So yeah, it almost feels like a necessary evil sometimes. It's just something I've got to do.
I can definitely see it becoming that. Yeah.
And is somebody able just to explain for a little bit for the people who don't know what the morning pages is?
What it entails. So what it entails, well, here's what it looks like for me. It looks like me rolling out of bed and fetching coffee immediately. And I have a coffee machine for that purpose. So there's one ready for me downstairs. So I pour myself a cup of coffee and then I get my notepad, my notebook out, and I write 3 pages. There's she's not particularly clear, I think, in the book how big the pages should be. Mine's A5. That's what I do.
So we've got the tool book, her latest book is, we were promoting it with Writing Magazine, which is why we're doing the pages.
Okay.
And she says A4. So I found it
A4.
really hard because I always write A5. So now I've got this big A4 and it's so much to fill.
You
But
just
I
have
do
to
like,
make your letters bigger.
Yeah,
my
maybe
handwriting is awful. It's massive anyway.
yeah.
So
Yeah, my handwriting's pretty awful. Maybe I'll ramp it up then and see what that feels like.
Mm.
Yes, in any case, it's 3 pages of just stream of consciousness, just writing whatever comes to mind. And I've got really used to doing that now. And it doesn't feel, and the point is to keep your pen moving. Like, you don't stop to think, what do I write next? Just keep moving. So some of it can be really repetitive. Sometimes, my morning pages might often drift into me just repeatedly writing, I don't know what else to say, I don't know what else to say, I don't know what else to say, but sooner or later something else will come out of my pen. So it's a way of accessing um, stuff that might be quite deeply embedded that just really needs to bubble up to the surface, and writing is a way of doing that. The other thing to say as well, shouldn't really talk about this in the book, but I know that writing is very, very regulating. So for people that are dysregulated, that struggle to kind of manage that emotional internal thermostat, writing is a way of settling the nervous system down. So that's another benefit to it. It's certainly a benefit for me. You know, I feel calmer when I've written 3 pages. So yeah, 3 pages, longhand. You're not supposed to type it. It's supposed to be longhand if you can. Every morning before you do anything else. But I allow myself to go and fetch coffee first.
Get coffee first.
Get coffee first.
Yeah, that's important.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I can't do much without coffee.
No.
It's my one vice that I refuse to relinquish.
Yeah. I don't blame you, to be honest. I'm exactly the same. As soon as I get up, straight to the coffee machine, straight for a coffee, and then I
Love
can do
it.
anything.
I made myself sound really, really posh then by saying I have a coffee machine, and I feel compelled now to just describe my coffee machine to you. Yeah, so when I say coffee machine, what I mean is I've got a coffee pot, which was my mother's, and it was the one thing I wanted from the house when my mother died a few years ago. Like, I don't want anything else, I want the coffee machine. It's an old-fashioned percolator, you know, the one that makes a noise.
Yeah.
So what I do is I set it up in the morning, and I've bought one of those plug sockets from Amazon that's got a timer on it. So I set it up so it turns on before I get out of bed. So it's not
Right.
like a big fancy, not the kind of coffee machine that you see in a coffee shop. It's not one of those. It's a pot that's just on a timer. But I'm not kidding. It's one of my favorite things in the world. It's one of the best things about my life. Apart from my children, apart from my kids and the dog, the coffee pot. I love it.
To be
That's a
fair,
great
that's
idea.
genius.
You can get a teas made, but not a coffee made.
I know, what's that all
Yeah.
about? Well, this kind of feels like like I've got a coffee made. Yeah, it's brilliant.
I could do one of them, to be fair. You might have to send me the link to that
I
one.
will. I will do. I will.
So obviously, apart from having your coffee in the morning, making
Yes.
you ready and doing your pages, what does a typical working day look like for you? It must be tricky balancing all of your different roles.
Yeah, it is pretty nightmarish, really. So, to be honest, my days are very, very all over the place, and I make no apology for that, really. Like I said, I don't have much of a routine. I mean, when I am in a routine, it's usually because it's been externally imposed. So when I'm at work, I'm at work. You know, like I said, I've still got a day job. I work Monday to Friday during working hours, and I'm seeing students. But I'm really lucky in the job that I've got because during vacation weeks, I'm not contracted to work, so I get summer off, which is amazing. And I get Christmas, I get 4 weeks of Christmas and 3 weeks at Easter, so I've got lots of time. But during teaching weeks, when students are in lectures, then I'm working in the middle of the day. So I get up stupidly early. This is probably going to upset everybody that's listening to this. I'm up at 5 in the morning, and and I've done that for so long now that it doesn't feel like a major thing for me. And I need to be up at that time because I'm best in the morning. So if I'm up at that time, it means that I have got time then to do all the things that matter for me. So that is writing my morning pages. I have to do some stretching because I'm perimenopausal and my joints are knackered. So it's very important that I stretch in the morning. So I do that. I wouldn't go so far as to call it yoga. It's just stretching. I walk the dog. And I usually do some form of some kind of creative work in the morning, whether that's being involved in my current work in progress, or whether that is coming up with content for newsletters or social media, or coming up with material that I am delivering for training. That all happens in the morning. And what I like about that is that nobody interrupts me because it's so early. Nobody else is up. So I get to do all of that stuff, which then means that I can go into the rest of my kind of ordinary day, if you like, feeling incredibly smug because I've already done all the things that I really value, all my kind of high value activities I've done already. So then it doesn't really matter if I don't do anything else for the rest of the day after I finish work. So that's sort of what it looks like, but that can look quite different during the holidays. During the holidays, when I've not got as many people to see, it is all over the place. I couldn't even begin to tell you what a typical day looks like because there just isn't one. It's just not one.
With the
So,
kids as well.
Oh
so
yeah, God, I
at the
didn't even
same
mention
time as
kids.
you.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean life can be pretty hectic, especially after school. I've got two children. I've got a 17-year-old, almost 17-year-old daughter who is actually pretty easy to manage. She's great. She's, never had a single tantrum. She's brilliant, really very, very easy to deal with. My son on the other hand is a little bit trickier. God bless him. He's just a tiny version of me, really. So he's got ADHD and he's also got Tourette syndrome as well. And he's also 13, so his hormones are raging. So he's just very difficult. He gets quite dysregulated. So I have to spend quite a lot of time, especially after school, with him, just, helping him to kind of organize himself and helping him to kind of, calm down if he's had, if something's gone off at school or if something's upset him, because he's very, very rejection sensitive. And just listening to well, both of them actually, because my daughter talks incessantly as well. They both talk incessantly, and I talk incessantly. So it is chaos when we're all in the house after school, after college is out of the way. It's just, yeah, like a zoo.
Sounds great.
It is great. I'm knackered most of the time, but it is great. I wouldn't really have it any other way, to be honest. And then we've got a dog in the mix as well, who's also completely nuts.
So what's next for you then as a writer? Is there something that you're working on at the minute that you can share with us?
There is, yes. So I'm working on I was just going to go off onto a million different tangents about all the ideas that I've got and all the other bits and pieces that I'm doing, but I'm just going to talk about this particular thing that I'm working on at the moment. So I'm working on a non-fiction book, which is pretty much about all of the stuff that we've been talking about today, really. So it's my take on that kind of intersection of neurodiversity, poverty, trauma, ill health, and writing. So I'm writing about all the stuff that gets in the way, all the reasons why that stuff gets in the way, how those different things overlap with each other. And I'm dividing that into different sections. And what I'm hoping is that this will also be a bit of not a workbook, but kind of a guidebook. So I'm going to include the stuff I guess that I talk about. I guess it's sort of a beefed up book version of the course that I run, the Neurodivergent Writers Toolkit, with more of an emphasis on the reasons why we find it so difficult to get going, and the reasons why so many of us are struggling with ill health and also skint and behind and fed up. And I don't have, I've not got a title for it yet. My working title in my brain is There's No Wonder You're Not Writing, but I'm not sure if that's what it's going to be called yet. So that's what I'm working on. I'm just still doing some research. So I'm trying to talk to as many neurodivergent writers as possible. And that includes all kinds of different writers. So freelancers, academics, fiction writers, people that write for fun, people that write for a career, copywriters, anybody that I can get my hands on who's willing to talk to me about their experiences. So I'm just gathering information, talking to people, and just starting to pull all of that together and figure out exactly what it is that I'm trying to say. So yes, that is the current work in progress. Never mind the novels that I've got on the back burner.
The next question was the sort of standard, what advice would you give to aspiring writers? But maybe there's something in the new book, just one piece that you could give us from there. That's a really good bit of advice.
Try to think as little as possible. Thinking is the enemy. Try to get out of your own head. The less thinking you can do, the better. It's thinking. My best thinking got me nowhere. So it's the action that matters.
We always end by asking for a book recommendation.
And this is the one thing that I prepared before, before I logged on today. So I am going to recommend a book called Stoner by John Williams, which I read. Have either of you two read that one?
I think I've read it. I definitely have heard of it.
No, I've not heard of it.
Yeah, so I came across this book around Christmas. Never heard of it before, never heard of this author. It's quite an old book now. I think he wrote it maybe in the 60s or 70s. It's set in the 50s though, 1950s America. It's absolutely brilliant. It's probably one of the most perfect novels I think I have ever read. And it's literally just a story about a man's life. The story about the title Stoner, because it put me off at first. I thought if this is going to be some dreary, tiresome drunkalogue about, some, hippie in California in the 1960s, I am not interested. But it's not about cannabis at all. It's the name of the character. Character is called William Stoner, so it's his surname. So, and it's literally just about his life. It's just a book about this man's marriage and his career and what happens to him. And it's just beautiful. The prose is beautiful. There's very little plot to it, actually. Not a great deal happens to this man. It's an ordinary, unremarkable life. But somehow it is just it's just gorgeous. Loved it. And I blazed through it in like 3 days. Could not put it down, just blazed through it. Read it cover to cover, 3 days. Bosh. And then sat back and thought, well, if I lived to be a million, I could never write something like that. So negative. But yeah, it is the kind of book that makes you think, God, it's amazing that something like that exists. I just loved it. Loved it.
I'm gonna get that out from the library again.
Definitely recommend.
I think that's the one thing from doing these podcasts is that my list of books to read now is getting
Yeah.
longer and longer and
Massive, massive list. I know. I've got a huge list as well.
longer. Fab. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been so great to speak to you.
A pleasure.
Yeah, so I mean, if anybody wants to buy Amanda's book, it's available to purchase. And if anybody's interested in any of her mentoring or services that she has to offer, make sure you get in touch with her. Fab.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning into the Write Club. We hope you enjoyed this episode and feel inspired to keep writing. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at Writers Online, your go-to for writing tips, competitions, and exclusive updates. Plus, you'll never miss an episode of the Write Club. Until next time, happy writing.